So, for example, in 23 we had the Karnataka elections. The 3 elections in Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, along with the ones later that year in Telangana. Just after a few months after that, we had the general elections, along with which the Odisha and the Andhra Pradesh elections happened. All these elections happened within the span of around 12 to 14 months, right, back to back. Why do we need so many elections back to back? This one nation, one election was the norm until 1967. It's not just a question of money. You have to understand that whenever these elections happen, there's a model code of conduct enforced. MCC comes in, goes for a few weeks, comes back again, goes in, comes back again.
It's not because of MCC that we are having a hindrance to governance, but because of our Prime Minister's willingness to be there in every election.
Okay.
What do you have to say on it? Is it the MCC or is it the Modi ji?
They would use those figures because at the end of the day, these are political figures and their job is to campaign among people, secure victory.
So I went to a few UPSC type websites, you know, and all these websites say this might be a violation of
basic structure. What the Congress has been trying to frame it as is that the power of the state legislative assembly is being made subservient to that of the center or especially the Lok Sabha. But that is not the case.
So we can say we have more of an informed voter now, comparatively.
No, I would say that the voter has always been informed, right?
Okay.
I mean, the very fact that after emergency, the voters of, especially the voters of the Gangetic Plains, voted out the Indira Gandhi government. Right now, the elections, the way the elections are structured, are very beneficial to the political class.
Definitely.
Right? Because every 6 months or 1 year or so, they are allowed, they just go on campaigning, they generate tons of money, they spend it, they are the most powerful characters at that point of time.
Over a period of time, elections have changed a lot, right?
Belgium also has a structured election system in place. So multiple countries have moved to this system of structured simultaneous elections. If there is only one point where you can bring up voter enthusiasm and you can say, come here and vote once in 5 years. That is a much better tagline than come vote for us once in 2024 June and then come again in 2024 December and vote again and then come again in 2025 February and vote again for us.
Yeah. And keep coming and coming.
Keep coming and coming. I mean, if there's a ward by election also, I have to go there, na? Thank you.
Maybe you will teach me some more Malayali words when I...
Malayalam words.
Okay.
Malayali is the person, Malayalam is the language.
Okay. Sorry. Jai Bhavani, Jai Shivaji.
Jai Bhavani, Jai Shivaji.
Damn man, this one nation, one election thing is so confusing. I just don't know what to decide about it. Okay, I can at least make a pros and cons list. So, one nation, one election does save a lot of money. That's what they say, right? But given our population size, should we cut cost on such an important thing? But at least we will get rid of the constant election-focused politics and disruptions to governance. But to ensure everyone's participation in democracy, can it even be made a one-time thing for the next 5 whole years? It will align regional interests with national level priorities in the voters' mind. Would be good for the nation's overall progress, no? But won't it make things way too centralized? What about the regional concerns which might get overlooked in such a setup? Okay, but it will also increase voter turnout most likely, no? People will be enthusiastic about voting, like vote once and be free for the next 5 years. But what if someone misses out on their only chance of voting? And damn man, still no clear picture. It's like for every supporting argument, there is an argument against it as well. I'm so confused about this topic and it's such a crucial thing. Wait, I seriously need a masterclass on it. Maybe you do too, right? And I just know the fit person for it. Who better than our lawyer friend Ananth Chitta to explain it to us? Hi Chitta, how are you?
Hi Pratik. How are you doing?
Confused.
Confused by?
Confused about this one nation, one election thing. I have been reading about it for quite a while now. Whatever I read, there is like a counter argument for it.
Yeah.
If I think, I have to support it, there is one argument in support. Then there are like 10 arguments against it. So overall, it seems very rosy, expenditure will come down, very generic arguments, and it feels like we should support it.
Yeah.
But if I read more into it, there are a lot of complexities involved and I'm very confused how to decide about such a crucial topic. So that's why I thought of you. Who better than you to explain it to us?
I think even last time it was a complex topic that we tackled, which is Waqf.
Yeah.
This time around, I think it's a much more complex topic because it is one nation, one election is a much more nuanced topic. And I think that any topic that we pick, there'll be arguments and counter arguments, especially if it's a good topic with substantiation in it. There will be arguments and counter arguments. And I think, that's why the bills that were introduced in Parliament during this last winter session were referred to a JPC also. Because the whole point that the government, once they accepted the report, the high-level commission's report on one nation, one election, the whole point was to have a discussion throughout the country about one nation, one election, which is exactly what this JPC is going to do. So I think it's good that you're confused, in the sense that it's an opportunity for you to learn and reflect on the problems with our political system and its structure, and how we can, try and better evolve a better polity, a better political structure for the country. So that confusion is good in my opinion. But you have to be well informed on what the actual issues are and why exactly we've gone about, or this proposal has come of one nation, one election. Right?
Okay. So you are saying there is a JPC in place, and if I have read correctly, it was former President Ramnath Kovind led committee, which prepared a report, and after which the JPC was formed. But constantly we are having this narrative from the opposition parties that they are sort of forcing this over the other parties, and they want to just bulldoze everything in Yogi Ji style. So is it true?
It's not true at all in this case.
Okay.
Right? At all. Because if you recall, one nation, one election has been talked about for a while by the Prime Minister himself for a while. But the actual, there was actually a high-level committee that was formed last year, headed by none other than a former president, Sri Ramnath Kovind, who headed the committee along with the Union Home Minister, along with Ghulam Nabi Azad, the former congressman, now leader of another political party. And even, in fact, the former leader of the largest opposition party in last Lok Sabha, Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, was also invited to be a part of the HLC. But he initially had accepted, but later decided not to participate in the high-level committee that was formed. So this high-level committee actually did a very extensive exercise of consulting all the political parties, both at the national level recognized political parties, state level parties, as well as other unrecognized political parties. They consulted all of them. They consulted various Supreme Court former justices of the Supreme Court, including Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, former election commissioners, and former High Court judges as well. So if you go through the HLC report that was submitted to the current president, you will see that a very extensive exercise was undertaken then itself, right? And then that report was submitted to the president. Then that report was accepted by the cabinet, and basis which it is only after that these two bills, which are cut copy paste of what the HLC recommended, has been introduced in the parliament. And again, it was very clear from the get-go that this bill is going to be sent to a JPC. And that's what happened. These two bills, which is one proposal of the two proposals that the HLC recognized, it was sent to a joint parliamentary committee consisting of members from both the main opposition alliance, the India Alliance, as well as the NDA, and some other non-aligned third parties as well. So that JPC is now going to sit on it, have extensive debate and discourse on it, and I'm sure that they probably undertake an extensive consultation exercise, just like the JPC on Waqf did. So to say that these bills have come out of the blue, or that there was not enough discourse on it, is just a it is completely opposed to the reality.
So mostly politics and very less facts in it.
Yes, it is mostly a very convenient political framing, right? That this discourse, this proposal has come out of the blue. The idea is to say that the government is dictatorial, the India government is dictatorial. But if you look at how this proposal has come about, it's very clear that, in fact, if anything, they've taken their time and going to take even more time for this proposal to come into fruition. Because again, we have to remember that the actual proposal is a constitutional amendment, which will require support of the opposition as well for passage in both the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha.
So please explain me where does this entire debate came from? Why do we even need one nation, one election? The money question is there, it will reduce a lot of expenditure. So as a country this big, so many people, so many voters, should we even be concerned about something like money for something as important as elections?
Yes, it's not just a question of money.
Okay.
Right? So where does this debate come from? So we have to understand and we have to keep in mind that this one nation, one election was the norm until 1967, or when the state assembly elections started to get misaligned with the general elections.
Okay.
So
because of dismissal of governments in between.
Yes, because of dismissal of various governments in between, because various state governments could not fulfill their term. That was also an issue at that point. So what had happened is that from 1952 to 1967, almost all the elections that happened in the country, that is the general elections to the Lok Sabha and the state assembly elections in the various states, were held together.
Okay.
Right? But as you had said, the dismissal of state governments, as a result of many state governments falling in between, from 1967 onwards, various state assembly elections and the general assembly elections started happening at different times.
Okay.
Right? So, but now, for example, if you look at the elections that were conducted in 2023 to 2024 election cycle, it is quite, the number of elections were quite a lot.
Yeah, for a while we are just seeing politics.
Correct. So, for example, in 23 we had the Karnataka elections.
Okay.
In the middle of the year.
Yes.
Then we had the the three elections in Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, along with the ones later that year in Telangana. And at the same time, just after a few months after that, we had the general elections, along with which the Odisha and the Andhra Pradesh elections happened. And at the same time, just after that, in October, we had the Haryana and the Jammu Kashmir elections. And then later in the year, we also had the Maharashtra and the Jharkhand elections. Right? So all these elections happened within the span of around 12 to 14 months, right? Back to back, which is a very intense election cycle, right? And we are not talking about small states here. Maharashtra is a huge state. The Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, though we already know are big states. So these elections happening back to back, and you have to understand that whenever these elections happen, there's a model code of conduct enforced. There's state government election machinery that is mobilized, and which means the school teachers, who are again mobilized again and again. At the same time, we also have the administrative expense, which is one component of this. And at the same time, we also have all the drama basi that comes with an election coming. As you said, politics.
Yeah.
So it becomes a 24/7 election news cycle, and governments are also aligned to do things that are immediately beneficial for the people for the specific set of people who are going for election, rather than keeping in mind more long-term or even medium-term goals that ideally that they should be focused on. So there's a fundamental question of, we are having so many elections back to back. How do we deal with this sort of system? How do we make a more structured system, right? How do we make a system that is much more stable? So it is from that debate and discourse that this idea that simultaneous elections, this is a more technical term, you could say simultaneous elections, should be the norm in the country, right? And that was the norm for a while, for the first 15 odd years. First elections were held in 1951 to 52 till 67. So those 15 years, that was the norm, right? Any election that was conducted in between was more of an aberration than a norm. So and we are trying to get back into that norm. And that is the proposal here, right? That we have a more structured, more stable system, rather than having these haphazard elections every few weeks or so, right? Or every few months
only.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I get this point about this being a very disruptive cycle for all sort of activities. You mentioned government teachers, and I remember my school days now. So I used to study in KV, and my school used to be the center for all these teachers training for elections, and not just state elections or just these national Lok Sabha elections. All the elections, even panchayat elections training used to happen in our places. And at that point of time, all the government teachers are there. Okay. And we were given chutti. So as a kid, I used to love it. I won't lie. But later on, when I reached higher standards, then I realized, okay, this is an issue. When we are in 11th and 12th and our classes are suspended for like 15-20 odd days regularly. which is kind of bad.
Yes.
So, okay, this disruption thing is there. But when it comes to expenditure part, so we will be holding, when we'll be holding simultaneous elections, so we will need more EVMs. Okay, we will need more people to, more government employees giving their duties. And what if the elections are like stretched too long? Like even the Lok Sabha elections this time were stretched very long, and then we are having Lok Sabha plus Vidhan Sabha plus something else also maybe. So all of this stretched and a lot more resources required. Won't that be a greater expenditure? I would say, for example, state government, many state legislatures will be dissolved also. So वो सारा election साथ में कराना, it will be a huge expenditure in itself. So for a cycle at least.
So this is more of a one-time expense, right?
Okay.
This is a structural change. If you're moving from the current system, if you're transitioning from the current system to a new system, there is some price to pay, right?
Okay.
But that price to pay in the sense administrative cost. But that actual of the things that you actually listed, I believe the actual administrative cost will be the procurement of the EVMs and the deployment of them.
Yeah.
Right? Because right now what the ECI is doing is they've bought a certain number of EVMs, they're circulating them around, right?
Okay.
And replacing them as and when necessary. But if you want to do one nation, one election, it is correct. We'll need more EVMs. But that is a one-time expense, right? The deployment of machinery, electoral machinery like the school teachers or other state government officials or other government officials, that is anyway going to happen, right? There is no double requirement or triple requirement when a polling station is allocated. There'll be more people from the polling agent side and there'll be more people to vote maybe, but that doesn't really change the amount of people or the deployment of machinery per se is not different, right? For a Vidhan Sabha election or for the Lok Sabha election.
It will be just the same number of people doing more work for that.
Yes, for that one single election.
And they will have to be paid only once instead of like 3-4 times.
Yes. Or the cost to the government of the disruption is once, right?
Yeah.
For example, in Maharashtra, they deployed it during the general elections. Then they had to deploy a few months later again for the Vidhan Sabha elections. Instead, you will have one cycle. You will have only one disruption per se to speak. Okay. So which means that the overall cost and the overall efficiency will be improved over time, and there will be more stability and there will be more structure in the way that elections are conducted in the country.
Okay.
So you have to not to do a reform. There'll always be some amount of cost.
Okay.
Right? Or to undertake an action, there'll always be some amount of cost to be paid. But that shouldn't deter you if the overall benefits of doing something is better.
Okay, understood. So from the cost perspective, it's a win.
Yes.
Okay, after a one-time expenditure.
Yes.
From disruption to governance perspective, it's a win.
Yes.
So there is another argument that always, we listen a lot on social media. I was scrolling through Twitter and I found it a lot. So when we say ki there is a constant MCC in place, Model Code of Conduct, and then we cannot announce, some decisions and policies and everything.
Yeah.
So Congress. So I went to the Congress site and so they have written one argument there and it's the same everywhere. And then they say ki it's not because of MCC that we are having a hindrance to governance, but because of our Prime Minister's willingness to be there in every election. They are giving examples of, previous Prime Ministers who have never been there, in the elections like the way Modi ji participates. So that's a very, let's say, popular argument from the opposition. What do you have to say on it? Is it the MCC or is it the Modi ji?
See, the problem is we are hyper focused on the fact that a character, that a persona like Prime Minister Modi ji is there, right? If you're hyper focused on that like Congress is, then yes, you would start seeing, once you start seeing one thing somewhere, you will start seeing the same thing everywhere. I would say that it's a fallacy to think that it's because of that. The Model Code of Conduct actually does hamper the functioning of the government bureaucracy, right? It basically freezes the ability of the government to do or undertake any action in response to even events that come and the events that occur during the course of the election, right? So you will see that, for example, if during the time of MCC, if there is a storm, if there is a cyclone, if there's a flood, the machinery is slower to act because Election Commission has to clear it out. Election Commission has to affirm any decision that the government takes for immediate relief. Okay. So the government machinery is essentially frozen and any decision and any action undertaken by the government, either whether it be state government machinery or central government machinery of that particular of that particular election, it has to be affirmed by the EC, right?
Okay.
So it stalls tenders, it stalls procurements, it stalls repair work, it basically freezes government to a more or less of a standstill, right? So this is not a result of the presence of the prime minister's popularity, which is why he is campaigning in every election. Because his popularity is so high. Obviously, the political party that he is part of will utilize him, right? That's just an inevitable part of being a popular political figure, right? And if you go back to the past, you will see that if there were popular prime ministers in the past, they have also campaigned in state assembly elections, panchayat elections, whatever elections, by-elections that come up. They would use those figures because at the end of the day, these are political figures. And their job is to campaign among people, secure victory, right? Secure election victories.
Yeah.
So to say that a very the most popular political figure in the country is going around campaigning, I don't think that is a particularly good insight.
Okay.
And they're completely dismissing a very rational and legitimate argument that MCC is freezing government machinery for months on end, right? So even during the course of the entire, let's just take the example of the general elections, right? So from the point where the elections were announced in March till results came in June, till that entire almost 3 months, you do not have a government that is able to go forward with a lot of decisions that it otherwise takes on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
Both the central government and all the state governments, right? So should we, and then again, we had a situation again, for example, in Maharashtra, again, it happened from whenever the elections were announced till the results came out. Again, it happened in Haryana. It happened in what is that place? JK. It happened in Jharkhand. So you are having multiple situations where the elections are happening back to back. MCC comes in, goes for a few weeks, comes back again, goes in, comes back again.
Yeah.
So this sort of disruption, it is nothing to joke about.
Okay. So, with regards to Modi ji being, actively campaigning all the time in all the elections, at least Congress should be happy, or let's say the opposition should be happy that they have to face the PM only once with the one nation, one election.
In one go, they'll have to face the entire machinery. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you were also saying, seeing, something in something, you used a phrase where you were saying, if you have to see the prime minister doing a certain thing, you will see it in everything. So with regards to seeing a particular thing in everything, Rahul Gandhi comes to my mind. Now he's seeing constitution in everything.
Yes.
The red book is in his head all the time. Not that red book, but that's what, the brain works at. So yeah. So he is having the constitution all the time. And even while I was researching about this thing, so I went to a few UPSC type websites, which gives courses to these young aspirants and all.
Yeah.
And all these websites say, this might be a violation of the basic doctrine, basic structure doctrine.
Yes.
Keshwanand Bharti case.
Yes.
So can you reflect a bit on that?
So this discourse was actually prompted also by Manish Tiwari, the MP from Chandigarh, again from the Congress. He also made this objection when the bills were introduced in the Lok Sabha, which was that this is a violation of basic structure. And I'll just introduce the argument first before I tell you what I think. The argument is based on the fact that once this if these new bills come into place, then the term of the legislative assembly in a state, will be tied to that of the whatever first Lok Sabha that is formed after the bills are introduced.
Okay.
So which means it's a little complicated, but what it means is that if after the new Lok Sabha is introduced in 2029. Right? Suppose it's introduced in 2029. Then the term of all the state legislative assembly elections that are held from 2029 to 2034, all of them will end in 2034.
Yeah.
Okay. And then after that, if any legislative assembly is elected and it's dissolved midway, then the remaining unexpired term of the legislative assembly will be tied to that of the original Lok Sabha. So, for example, I'll just give you a broad example. Suppose the Andhra Pradesh elections happen. Andhra Pradesh elections are scheduled to happen in 2029.
Yeah.
Right? and they happen along with it. Once the bills have come into play, they happen, right? With it. And then after that, if the Andhra Pradesh Legislative Assembly, for whatever reasons, because the government could not be formed or because the government fell in between, then the new elections are held in 2030. Okay. Then the term of that new assembly
will be like 4 years.
Will be 4 years, which is tied to the original term of the Lok Sabha, which will be 2099 to 2034.
Yeah.
Right? So the argument is that you are tying the term or the term of the Legislative Assembly to the term of the Lok Sabha. But the problem now I'll step to the actual argument, the counter argument of my opinion. The problem with this argument is that even the Lok Sabha is bound by this.
Yes.
Okay, suppose a new Lok Sabha is introduced elected in 2029, then that Lok Sabha, if it dissolves in 2032, let's say, then that new Lok Sabha that is elected in 2032 will only get the unexpired term of its original term, which is till 2034.
Okay. Yeah.
So the argument
is the same for both.
Yes, both the Lok Sabha and the legislative assemblies, yes, they are tied to the term of the original Lok Sabha.
Definitely.
Right? Okay, that is the argument that it violates basic structure. But the problem is that the Lok Sabha is also bound by the same rule, right?
Yes.
If the Lok Sabha is elected in between its unexpired term, it will have to serve. It can only serve the remaining time period of its original time, and so do the legislative assemblies, right?
Yeah.
As a result of which, this entire argument kind of falls apart, in my opinion. But again, if this legislation is enacted and if it becomes law, I'm sure that it will be challenged in the courts. And I would, say that this is a legal argument.
Yeah.
It is best to try and test it out in the Supreme Court.
Okay.
See how it goes. Because I do not believe, as per my understanding of the basic structure, and I think logically also, forgetting the legal argument, I don't think that is a very good argument to be made for it violating the basic structure, because the rules for the Lok Sabha and the rules for the Legislative Assembly with respect to how they will serve an unexpired term is the same.
Okay.
And we have to keep in mind that the powers of the Legislative Assembly are not changed, right? Because they have the same set of powers that they have before. They can make law on concurrent list subjects. They can make law on the subjects that are in the state lists.
Understood.
The power of the state legislative assembly is not derogated, but what the Congress has been trying to frame it as is that the power of the state legislative assembly is being made subservient to that of the center, or especially the Lok Sabha. But that is not the case.
Okay, understood. So with regards to this basic structure doctrine being violated or somehow federalism being weakened or something.
Yes.
So there was an argument where they have stressed it further on the Congress website only, which I read. And they are saying that, by this, once they undermine this basic structure here with one nation, one election, they will go on for one nation, one culture, one nation, one religion, one nation, one, there is an argument that where they are saying they are anyways forcing people to eat one sort of meals. So, how do you see it? They are hinting sort of, at the autocratic tendencies of a government in such a setup. So does that argument hold weight?
No, I would completely dismiss it, because the problem is that it's a explicitly political framing. I don't think other than it being a political framing of what the NDA government is, I don't think it holds any value, because as I explained in the beginning, the way that this legislation has been brought about in Lok Sabha itself is a very big indication that the government is willing to listen and debate and discourse on this topic. Very evident by the fact that an HLC was constituted with multiple members, including invitations to the then opposition, a member of then opposition. Then this JPC has been constituted. Again, it is a parliamentary procedure. So members of the opposition blocks, both the India Alliance and the other Congress Ka India Alliance, as well as other members of the opposition, are also included in the alliance. So to say that, this is autocracy, this is autocratic, it is just a political framing, when it is quite clear that, whatever reform that you're trying to bring about has been, you're debating it, you're having public discussions about it, you're leaving it through parliamentary, extensive parliamentary procedure. It is only a political framing, right? It doesn't hold any real water, in my opinion.
Okay, understood. So this bit is clear, but with regards to, let's say, when one nation, one election happens, won't it be like the national parties with a bigger resource pool, with a bigger, let's say, to standardize their narrative across the let's say state level and Lok Sabha ka level and uske niche everywhere. So won't it be unfair to, let's say, state-based parties, let's say Samajwadi Party in UP, or in terms of resources, or in terms of, let's say, there is also this narrative of the ruling party at the center controlling the central agencies, which is always there.
Yeah.
And in a setup of one nation, one election, will it be like that they'll be able to exploit that machinery for their benefit? Will the states be at,
the mercy of the center?
yeah.
Definitely not.
Okay.
And if you think like that, then you're basically misunderstanding how this. You're misunderstanding how the political structure of the country works, and you're underestimating how the voters think.
Okay.
I think that is a more fallacious thing to do. I'll first address the institution wala question, which is the Election Commission of India's question, right? The problem with that sort of framing is that Election Commission is anyway the agency or the organization that is constitutional organization that is anyway conducting the elections.
Yeah.
Whether it be the state assembly elections or the Lok Sabha elections, it is conducted by the Election Commission of India only, right? So whether the elections happen in one way or two ways, the Election Commission of India, it has been functioning in this country for 60, 70 odd years. It has conducted 17, 18 general elections now. Now, if you go about doubting the Election Commission's integrity, you will have to start doubting from 1952 onwards, right? Because the institution did not spring out of nowhere on 2014, right? The institution has always been there, right? So I think that is extremely fallacious. I don't think that is a reasonable argument at all to be made. With respect to the nationalization of elections, now this is the fear of a lot of regional parties and a lot of smaller parties, right? That the discourse will become nation-centric.
Basically the patriotic, or let's say the nationalist discourse or national level discourse will be overshadowing all those regional concerns, the people's daily life concerns and all of that.
I believe that the very fact that how the 2024 general election results came, and then a few months how radically different the Haryana results were, and then a few months later, just a few weeks later, how the Maharashtra results came, from compared to 2024 general elections, shows that regardless of this thing, people can very easily distinguish between whether it is an election happening for the state assembly election level, whether it is an election happening at the panchayat level, or whether it is an election happening at the central level or at the level of the Lok Sabha. Now, if you go through the history of simultaneous elections and how many times elections have held simultaneously, you will see multiple instances of regional parties performing really well at the regional level, but national parties performing really well at the national level. Okay. For example, in Odisha in 2019, BJP performed much better at the Lok Sabha level than they did at the assembly election level, where the BJD, the Biju Janata Dal, had a much better performance.
Definitely.
Right? In Andhra Pradesh also, in that same 2019 election, the TDP had a very negative performance. Right? The BJP was not a big party there, but the TDP had a very negative performance. But at the same time, YSRCP swept the assembly election there, right? And if you break it down like that, and you see the difference between how the elections turned out in Telangana also from the 2023 December assembly elections to the BJP's much more positive result in the 2024 GE, you will see that people are very easily capable of distinguishing between what is an assembly election, what is a Lok Sabha election, and what is a panchayat election, right?
So we can say we have more of an informed voter now, comparatively.
No, I would say that the voter has always been informed, right?
Okay.
I mean, the very fact that after emergency, the voters especially the voters of the Gangetic Plains, voted out the Indira Gandhi government is an indication that at multiple levels, there were a recognition of what happened during emergency, right? Now, the literacy levels or the rates of this thing that happened then is much different. It was much lower than what it is now. Prosperity levels also, you should understand the ability of people to communicate, regardless of being literate. That is also much higher now. Even then, people were I believe that yes, I think people are very much able to discern and decide for themselves what they think is good for them, right? And that at the end of the day is the fundamental principle of democracy. If you're believing in democracy, that's what you're ultimately trusting yourself on. So if you think the voter is not smart enough to figure out this is a local election, this is a assembly election, and this is a central election, I think you're basically underestimating the voter, and I question your legitimacy as a political party also.
Okay.
Right? So this entire discourse around the voter not being informed or the voter not being aware is, I think, problematic.
Fallacious.
It is fallacious, and it's very clear to me that you cannot have there can be national narratives, but even if you look at the 2024 general elections, right, you will specifically see that, for example, the BJP swept Odisha both in terms of the Lok Sabha and the assembly election.
Yes.
But its performance in the Lok Sabha was much better than the performance in the assembly election cumulatively, right? So if you look at it like that, you will see that the issues that the BJP had signaled within nationally were different from what might they have signaled specifically in Odisha as well, right?
Yeah.
And vice versa, you would see that every election that happens in the country, whether it be assembly election level or national level election, local issues of that constituency, of that region will always dominate, right? Because the voters are not just on Twitter or not just on Instagram or not just on Facebook, right? The voters
are living there.
They're living there, they're breathing there, they know the issues, right? Whether or not they just get swept up in national news would be fallacious to think. It would be fallacious to think that, because they are also aware of what the context is, what difficulties they face in their day-to-day life, and they would be very well be aware that this person would be good for at this level, this person would be good at that level. And you will see that sort of choices being made if you go back and check 2019 Odisha, 2019 Andhra Pradesh, 2024 also in multiple places. If you just look at the gap between elections, you will see that the voter makes radically different choices based on who's contesting, what parties are contesting, what level they're contesting in.
Yes.
So this sort of idea that 1.4 billion people can be swept up in one national narrative. I mean, other than when we are facing an exigency, like an external threat of a high degree,
definitely,
I do not believe that can be the case, right?
Yeah, like in war situations.
Yeah, in a situation of war or in a situation of COVID.
Yeah.
Then it is a very rational thing that all of us will have one singular response. Even in this case, for example, me and you, we might disagree on 100 million different things, and we will have very different views of who is good for what level.
Yes, definitely. Okay, understood. So, but when it comes to this one nation, one election thing, and when it has happened in the past, so we have had Lok Sabha elections and Vidhan Sabha elections together.
Yeah.
But in the new setup, are we having more elections included to it? Let's say panchayat level elections or ward level elections, and at least at that point of time, there will be some sort of confusion if those elections are also involved, or if we do that. For example, again, those are elections as well. Those will also require a lot of machinery and resources to be deployed. So why not have all of them together? In case we are having all of them together, won't it be like weakening the grassroots democracy, where actually the daily issues of people might get overshadowed? So it is also a concern that I have read in some papers, and
So I would say, firstly, that proposal has not been tabled yet.
Okay.
That proposal is yet to be tabled, and HLC had recommended the two proposals be tabled. The first proposal is the one that we're discussing right now, which is to align the Lok Sabha and the Vidhan Sabha elections. Right? This is the second proposal you're talking about, which is to align the elections of the local bodies. And in that, however, the HLC says it does not need to be conducted exactly simultaneously. Rather, it should be conducted within 100 days of the original election.
Yeah.
Right? So that proposal, again, even though the cabinet has approved of it, that proposal, I think, will come after this proposal is reaches somewhere with the JPC. Right?
Okay.
So we'll have to see the particulars whenever it comes out. But A, it won't be. It is not recommended that it be conducted simultaneously. B, it will. The way that it has been recommended is conducted within 100 days of the election to the Lok Sabha and the Vidhan Sabha. Okay. So that I think will address your question of whether or not there's too much too much of a synchronicity, and it reduces local issues. But I would again refer to the fact that I believe that the voter is discerning enough to understand what is a local issue, what is a state issue, and what is a national issue, right? Firstly. Secondly, we also have to consider another administrative nuance here. The elections to the local bodies are not conducted by the Election Commission of India, but by state election commissions, which are which are bodies created by the Constitution, through the 93rd and 94th Amendment, etc., etc. But those bodies are a separate administrative mechanism. All right. So that is why the proposals have been tabled in separate ways as well, because it has to take care of the structural difference between a panchayat election, which might not be concurrent or correct as aligned to the assembly election and the Lok Sabha election, which it is a parliamentary constituency is formed by multiple ACs or joined together in the same delimitation, while the panchayat delimitation is a separate exercise undertaken by the state election commission. So that is there is a recognition of that fact. But yet, again, when even though local body elections happen, again MCC is a factor, right? So even then, we have to think about the administrative machinery, the cost, the expense. To align that, it is suggested, the HLC has suggested that it be conducted within 100 days of the original election.
Okay, so not like together, but people getting the time to recalibrate and think about their own issues.
Yes.
So I was initially thinking, you are choosing your ward member, you are choosing your MLA, you are choosing your MP, and of course the CM and the PM together. So
see, that's the thing though. We should never think that we are just choosing the CM and the PM. Right?
Of course.
We are choosing, and when we vote for the ward member, we are not really voting for the mayor either, right?
Yes.
So I think it is always best to keep in mind, of course, you should consider who might be the CM, who might be the PM. That is an important factor. I'm not saying it's not.
Yeah.
But the way that voters might be thinking, they might not just be thinking about CM or PM or mayor. I don't think any voter thinks about a mayor, to be very honest. But they might not be thinking about CM. They might be thinking about it. Very important factors, no doubt. But they'll be thinking about the individual MP. They'll also be thinking about political parties, right? Which is a very important part of this entire dynamic. So if a voter is going to vote for a party, then he might be aligned to vote for that same party in the Lok Sabha, regardless of when it is conducted, right?
Okay.
So I think voter choices and voter dynamics might be too complex for us to decipher here. But I trust the voter. I am personally a believer in democracy. I believe that the voter is more than capable of discerning what is good for them.
Okay, understood. So from this particular question, I have understood that it's quite of a well thought, proposal, a well thought idea, and they are also not rushing it.
Yes.
We have not got any date, from now on we are having one nation, one election or something like that. But what do you think, since you have done very detailed study on it, what do you think are the misses, or what do you think could have been better? And, maybe the not giving the opposition the chance, or the general public, for instance, the chance to doubt those ideas.
I honestly think that the general public is not, really thought about the topic or been well informed. I don't see that sort of discourse happening yet. I think
hope our masterclass changes it.
I hope so too, because it is a topic that is worthy of discussion and debate, which is key. Why should we have so many elections back to back, right? And what is that cost? What is the expenses that we are facing as a result? How do we get over that, right? That is genuinely what this discussion should be about, right? The one nation, one election proposal is the proposal that has come about now, is a way to structure our elections and a way to conduct simultaneous elections. We should debate the nuances. We should debate how it should come about, right?
Okay.
I think one of the problems with the current proposal might be that it will take more time for it to come into fruition, right? So the transitionary provision basically ensures that it will only happen, the first one nation, one election as per this proposal will only happen in 2034 in normal course, right?
Okay.
So that is one problem. Then similarly, I don't think there is enough discussion on, or enough, there should be more thought about what will we do with unexpired terms, right? If the unexpired term of assembly is less than a year, then I'm not sure if it makes sense for that sort of short-term legislative assemblies to happen, right? If the election process will also inevitably take a month, even if it's an assembly election. So we have to put more thought into structuring the elections. I think there needs to be a little more thought, and more importantly, I think there needs to be more public discourse on the costs of having this electoral system, which the government has been talking about, right? Which administrative efficiency, the problems with respect to having so many elections at the same time. The problem that I think we face right now is that the opposition is not engaging with the fundamental question, which is key. Why do we need so many elections back to back? Why do we need so much administrative disruption every time an assembly election happens, right? Which you're not engaging with. You are again engaging in hysterical, discourses around one nation, one language, one
culture,
one
religion, one eating habit.
Yes. So I think that's a disservice to the debate.
Okay.
Right. I would genuinely want more debate and discourse on it because it deserves it, right? Because
definitely
it is a very big change in the entire political system.
Okay.
And if you are not willing to engage with what the government is trying to do, then you're doing disservice to your own voters and to the country, because your job at the end of the day should be to engage with the government, should be to debate, discuss, and that's what the parliament is also, and that's what the JPC is also about. But you don't even participate in the HLC, right? You the way that you opposed even the introduction of the bills just signals that it is not a good way to bring about the discussion. But I'm very hopeful. The JPC meeting so far, I think only one meeting or two meetings have happened so far. I think it started out in a polite fashion. Let us hope that that JPC is able to engage with everybody, people who support, people who oppose, and a better public discourse comes about on this topic, and we try and address the deficiencies of our political system, right? Because our constitution and our republic, our country and our democracy should always be about trying and improving our system. Even if it's 0.1%, we should try and improve it.
We should
try. We should never stop and think, this is the perfect system. It is not. I don't think perfection is unachievable, right? And we are not striving for a utopia.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean you give up or you think that this system is the best. I think it is always best to have this sort of debate and discourse. And I think that through that, we can even improve this proposal even more, maybe have the transitionary provision to come in earlier so that one nation, one election can come sooner, or, make other changes to ensure that, smaller unexpired terms are dealt with, or, there are multiple solutions, multiple technical details that should be debated and discussed about, discussion should be there about, so that, a better proposal is there, rather than just saying, oh no, this is the best system.
Yeah. So like they can also, the lalach of cutting short Modi ji's term should be enough for them to support one nation, one election maybe.
I don't know what this thing would be. That is, again, it becomes entirely political. Not you go for that. But, you should have that sort of debate, right? You shouldn't just be like, no, this is a question of federalism. This is a question of basic structure. Which
at least discuss it. Don't just boycott every committee, every joint parliamentary committee.
I'm glad they didn't boycott the JPC. That's what I'm glad about. So I think that is a good first step.
And it is also not like that, switching to one nation, one election will completely end politics. It will just rid us of electoral politics, election focused politics, and not politics on policies, politics on decisions, or whatever you believe in.
Yes.
So that will be anyways allowed. So you can always go in the parliament and debate and
the
corner the government.
Exactly. The problem is that the people, the political class, it right now the way the elections are structured are very beneficial to the political class.
Definitely.
Right? Because every 6 months or 1 year or so, they are allowed. They just go on campaigning. They generate tons of money. They spend it. They are the most powerful characters at that point of time.
Yeah.
And they have outsized media influence. They have outsized power at that time. And I'm sure politicians enjoy, doing electoral politics, right? Some people,
definitely.
Which is a good thing. I'm not saying they shouldn't enjoy it.
For them, basically.
Yes, but that is not the job, right? The job is to do politics for 3 months or 4 months or 2 months at best.
People.
And then the whole point is public service, right?
Yes.
That's what people try to say, ki Jan Seva, right? You Pradhan Sevak, the way the Prime Minister put it, I think is absolutely correct. Your job at the end of the day is to ensure citizen delivery, right? Whether it be, and for somebody like the Prime Minister, it's at a very macro level, but every single person's job, whether it be an MP or an MLA, is to try and represent their people better.
Definitely.
So if this system genuinely promotes the idea that the MP and MLA, whoever it is an MP and MLA for that term, right? And for that period, right? So if you're doing that and you're not constantly being hijacked back into elections, right? Think about an MP elected in Maharashtra, right? That fellow would have had to campaign for the Lok Sabha, obviously.
Yeah.
Then in the Vidhan Sabha again.
Yeah.
And then if later on Mumbai corporation elections happen, then if he's a Mumbai MP, then he'll be campaigning for that in a few weeks' time if that election is going to happen.
Yeah. And
right?
the way Maharashtra politics was going on for a while,
yes,
then every second, third month you will be like in that mode.
Yes, exactly. So how do you... It's insane. Like, it is not a good system, right? We have to admit to ourselves that not everything that in the system that we have is good. It's best first to recognize the problem, and try and make it to a better system, which is exactly what this proposal is about.
Okay. So you have cleared almost all my doubts, but I have like 2 more questions, tangential. But for instance, over a period of time, elections have changed a lot, right? The way we, reach out to people, social media is there. A lot of money is there. Yeah. That's my biggest concern now. A lot of money is involved in fighting an election, be it even a election for a pradhan. I have seen 50 odd lakh rupees being spent in a panchayat election. Imagine. So that is the kind of money that we are spending, and that is the kind of money, double the amount or triple the amount the MLAs are spending.
Yes.
So it keeps on, growing and growing. So with this kind of money being spent on elections, where do you think common people, as the Prime Minister keep on saying, that younger people should come into politics? But this way, only the ones who are entitled or have some sort of a political family, come from a political family, would be able to participate in electoral politics. So the way we are thinking about one nation election, can we also think about, putting these bars in places? So could there be some check and balance?
So the problem right now is what you said, is that there are already spending limits, right? That the Election Commission enforces. That sort of system, it will prevail regardless of what the norms are, what the laws are. So rather than looking at it from the perspective of how much money is being spent, which I think, right now everything is very political party centric, right? Yes. Political parties at the end of the day decide a lot of how much money gets spent, how much money doesn't get spent. And I think that will be a completely different conversation altogether.
Yes.
So I will not get into that per se, but I will say that this sort of system will genuinely, definitely allow a lot more discussion to be happened in the governance front rather than electoral politics front, right?
Definite.
So then the incentives are more aligned towards governance rather than just doing electoral politics, right?
Yes.
So if you think from that perspective, and then you have the structured system in place, then I think it should only encourage, people of our age, people who below 30, 35, who are, interested in this space, to engage with political parties, to go out there and fight contest elections on their own, not on their own, but, get the political parties back, even if they want to go on and campaign, whether it be a ward election. I think it would encourage that, because the incentive alignment is not to do gundagiri and, do electoral politics every 6 months or 8 months or so.
Yeah.
The signal would be key. You have to focus. You're given this much amount of time. You have to focus on service delivery. You have to focus on this thing at that point of time. You don't have to worry about funding your next election, right?
Definitely.
So
that is the point.
Yes. So if you think like that, and if you think it from that perspective, it is quite clear that this is a better option. This is a better structured system. Is a better option for a country. And if you go through how, I'll give you a very simple example. If you look at how Western democracies function, some of them also have this sort of structured or simultaneous elections, right?
Yes.
So for example, if let's just take the example of US, right?
Yeah.
Where the US president, the elections happen every 4 years, right?
Yes.
Even when they had a civil war, they had an election, right? In the 1860s.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So even when during World War II, they had conducted, 1940 में election हुआ था, 1944 में election हुआ था. So 1940 they hadn't entered the war, but 1944 it was in between the war that they conducted the election, right? So and the way that the US system is also structured, the president or whoever is elected president will serve a 4-year term.
Yes.
So for example, if the president dies during office, like Franklin FDR died during, John F. Kennedy died.
They have a thing for dying while serving.
Dying while serving. Then the vice president becomes the president, right? And when the vice president is, if any reason, if he dies, resigns, or is impeached, then the Secretary of State becomes the president. So
Yeah.
they have a very structured
they,
system.
They ensure that the term is completed
Yes.
and not, having another election.
Yeah, they don't have another election, right? Whatever person is elected for that 4 years, that person is supposed to serve for that 4 years. If that person cannot serve, then the vice president will serve. The vice president can serve. After that, the cabinet ministers will start serving.
Yeah.
So, or the speaker will also, the speaker of the House of Representatives will serve, right? And
Understood.
so similarly, if a senator dies, then for that they hold or is impeached or resigns, they hold a special election for the remainder of their term, right? So even the UK had also something called a Fixed Terms Parliament Act, which the Conservative government did repeal in 2022, but they also tried doing this. Belgium also has a structured election system in place. So multiple countries have moved to this system of structured simultaneous elections. It is important for us to recognize that as well, right? No other country, I think, has. I mean, it is a good thing in a way. It is a good thing that elections are a festival of democracy.
Yeah.
But too many festivals back to back, I'm not really sure.
Of course, they don't feel like festival anymore.
Yeah, it just feels like routine politics, right?
Okay.
Which is not a good thing for the country. I believe that if electoral politics is confined to 3 months in a 5-year span, rather than 3 months every year, which is the case now, I think that would be better for the country. I think that would be better for public discourse, and at very least, it'd be better for our YouTube ads. It'd be better for our Instagram ads, where we are bombarded every single
definitely.
day. Yeah. So I think it'd be good for all of us that way. If you only need to see it once in 3 years, I think please bring it on, and so that it is much more structured, much more aligned. And one other thing that I think we didn't touch upon is voter enthusiasm. Right?
Yes, that is what I actually thought about.
Yeah.
We'll be feeling like, okay, let's get done once and for all.
Yeah.
And vote with much enthusiasm. More voters will turn out.
Yes.
So is it actually gonna happen, or will it be like, too much?
No, I see. The thing is, if you're having only one election for both the one-time election in which both the assembly election and the Lok Sabha election, you will see that the numbers go up, right?
So,
the polling percentage goes up, and that is a result of the fact that the dates would be aligned. So, for example, I'm a voter right now in Kerala, right? I am not in Kerala. I'm not residing in Kerala full time. If I'm going out for work, then I have to come back and vote, right? If I only have to come back once in 5 years and vote,
you would consider coming back.
it would be more aligned for me to come back and vote, right? And this is a case for a lot of, think about NRIs, right? They don't have the ability to vote from abroad. They have to come down here and vote, right? I mean, there's a proposal to change that, but that's a separate discussion.
Definitely.
But if you have the option of coming back once and voting and then going back, you'd much rather do that. And it's also a case for a lot of migrants, right?
Definitely.
If you look at the Tamil Nadu, for example, I read a few months back, that a lot of voters, people who went to vote from Odisha or Jharkhand during the 2024 general election, they didn't come back, right? And industries are facing a labor shortage. I don't know if it's still the case, but they were facing a labor shortage for a while in June, July, because these voters stayed there for a few weeks, a few months at a time. So the disruption to the economy is also very real, right? So if you look at it from this sort of perspective, and you think about how much voting changes people ka moods, and because we are a very good democracy, I would say, because we have 60%, 65%, 70% people voting.
The way
especially
world is functioning right now, so we are anyways doing very good.
So we have a good high polling percentage, especially in rural areas, which is really good. So if there is only one point where you can bring up voter enthusiasm and you can say, come here and vote once in 5 years, that is a much better tagline than come vote for us once in 2024 June, and then come again in 2024 December and vote again, and then come again in 2025 February and vote again for us.
Yeah. And keep coming and coming.
Keep coming and coming. I mean, if there's a ward by election also, I have to go there, na?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is, if I am a citizen of the country, I feel some sort of guilt if I don't go.
Yeah.
Right? So, if I just show up once, and I have to show up regularly only once in 5 years, I think that is a much more reliable statement for a lot of voters, right? Than having to show up ever so often to the polling booth.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Chetta. It's always a pleasure talking to you, especially on Masterclass and apart from Masterclass also.
Thank you, Pratik. It was my, pleasure to be here, and to speak with you again about something very complex and complicated like one nation, one election.
Yeah. I would request our viewers to go and watch our previous episode with Ananth Chetta, What the Waqf. And I hope after this conversation, you will become more of a fan. We will be having him more often on our show because his knowledge set is quite diverse and we can have him speak on multiple, issues and topics. So thank you very much, Chetta.
Thank you.
And maybe you will teach me some more Malayali words when I...
Malayalam words.
Okay.
Malayali is the person, Malayalam is the language.
Okay. Sorry, sir. Malayalam words. Okay, sir. I would like to end it by saying Jai Bhavani, Jai Shivaji.
Jai Bhavani, Jai Shivaji.
Thank you.
Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.